She was cast out for being barren, but she whispered to her belly, "They will regret losing you." From a very young age, she felt different from other children, not because of anything obvious, but because of a quiet longing inside her. While other girls played with dolls and imagined parties and weddings, she often sat alone under the shade of a big neem tree, dreaming of a future filled with love, laughter, and a little child she could call her own. It seemed like such a simple dream, yet it was the one thing she wanted more than anything in the world. Her parents noticed her gentle nature and always hoped she would find a kind and loving husband one day. They treated her with care, encouraging her to study and learn, but they also reminded her to remember the traditions of the village. "A good wife is a woman who can take care of her family," her mother often said, not realizing that the words would weigh heavily on her. These words planted a seed of pressure, a quiet reminder that her worth would one day be measured by her ability to bear children. When she finally reached adulthood, a young man from the village caught her attention. He was quiet, respectful, and seemed to understand her in a way few others did. Their courtship was simple. They walked together along the paths by the river, talked about dreams of a happy life, and laughed over small jokes that only they shared. Soon they married in a small ceremony surrounded by close relatives. For a while, everything felt perfect. She imagined a life filled with the warmth of a family, evenings with shared stories, and most importantly, the pitter-patter of little feet running through the house. But life, as it often does, did not follow her plans. Months passed, then years, and she remained childless. At first, there was quiet hope. "Perhaps it will happen soon," she would tell herself, brushing away worry as she went about her daily chores. She tried not to pay attention to the small remarks, the subtle questions from neighbors about when she would give the family a child. But as the whispers grew louder, she could no longer ignore them. The village, once a place of comfort and familiarity, started to feel like a cage. She noticed how people avoided her during festivals or family gatherings, how her husband's relatives began to speak to her with polite distance, and how her own family seemed to pity her more than they loved her. Each comment, each look became a tiny blade cutting deeper into her heart. "Why hasn't she given birth yet?" someone would ask in a low voice, and the words, though meant for the air, always reached her ears. Her husband, initially kind and loving, began to change too. The disappointment he felt was never spoken aloud, but it was in the way he stopped holding her hand in public, in the way he looked away when others commented about children. She tried to talk to him, to share her fears and pain, but the conversations ended in silence or hurried excuses. Sometimes, late at night, she would lie awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the soft sounds of the house as it slept. She felt utterly alone, as if her dream of becoming a mother had become a cruel joke. Despite the pain, she refused to let despair completely take over. She developed a secret ritual, something that no one else in the village knew about. She would place her hand gently on her belly, closing her eyes, and whisper softly, "They will regret losing you." It was her way of holding onto hope, a private promise to a child she had not yet met. Sometimes she imagined the child growing inside her, tiny hands and feet, the warmth of their presence. These moments gave her strength, even when the world around her seemed determined to break it. Days were long, and her chores never ended. She woke before sunrise, fetching water from the well, sweeping the floors, cooking meals, and tending to the small garden behind her house. Each task reminded her of the life she lived, yet she carried them with a quiet dignity. She never let the villagers see the full weight of her sadness. Instead, she smiled politely, answered questions with short, calm words, and walked with her head held high. But inside, she felt the constant ache of longing, like a silent drum that never stopped beating. There were moments, however, when the world seemed unbearably cruel. At festivals, when other mothers walked proudly with their children, she would feel a sharp pang of sorrow. Children would run around laughing, their mothers calling them with joy, and she would stand at the edge, invisible, wishing it could be her holding one of those laughing little hands. In her heart, she sometimes asked, "Why me? Why do I not deserve this simple happiness?" The question had no answer, only the echo of society's judgment and her own silent tears. Her family's gatherings became another battlefield. Relatives would offer advice, some kind-hearted, others harsh. "You must try harder," one would say, not realizing the weight such words carried. "Perhaps you are too young to worry," another might suggest, and she would nod politely, hiding the storm of emotions inside her. Every suggestion was a reminder of what she did not have, a constant reflection of the life everyone assumed she could not live. And yet, in the quiet of the night, her whispers became her shield. She imagined a world where her child would come to her, where laughter would fill her home, where people who had doubted her would see her strength and resilience. These imagined moments were not just dreams, they were lifelines, small but powerful beacons of hope that kept her from sinking entirely into despair. She also began writing in a small notebook, words she would never show anyone. She wrote letters to the child she longed for, describing the world, her hopes, her fears, and the love she already felt. "I will wait for you," she wrote one night under the dim light of a single lamp. "No matter how long it takes, I will hold you one day, and we will be happy together." These letters, full of tender emotion and silent promises, became her closest companions. They were a safe place where she could pour her heart without fear of judgment. Over time, the villagers noticed her resilience. Some whispered about her quietly, others looked at her with pity, and a few admired her quiet dignity. But admiration did not ease the loneliness she felt. Every day was a test of endurance, a struggle to maintain her sense of self when the world seemed determined to diminish it. She learned to draw strength from her own heart, to remind herself that her value was not defined by society or by the judgments of others. Even in her darkest moments, she nurtured hope. She spoke softly to herself, whispering the same words she said to her belly, "They will regret losing you." It became a mantra, a promise, and a source of courage. In those whispers, she found a resilience that no one could take away, a quiet power that made her face each day with determination, even when the world around her seemed unkind. And so life went on in the small village, filled with its usual rhythms of work, celebrations, and gossip. She continued her daily routines, tending to her home and her family's needs, all the while carrying a secret world inside her, a world of hope, dreams, and whispered promises. Though she had been cast out in spirit by the judgments of others, she had not given up on her deepest desire. She had learned that strength often comes from silent endurance, that hope can survive in the smallest of whispers, and that even when the world doubts you, the heart has a way of holding onto what it loves. Every night as the village slept and the stars filled the sky, she would place her hand on her belly and whisper once more, softly and with conviction, "They will regret losing you." And in those words she found a courage that no one could see, a promise that her story was far from over, and a belief that one day the life she dreamed of would come to her. As the years passed, the isolation she felt grew heavier. The village that had once seemed warm and familiar now felt cold and distant. The laughter of children in the streets, the chatter of mothers comparing stories about their little ones, and the celebrations of families with growing households, all of it reminded her, day after day, of what she longed for but did not have. Every festival, every wedding, every family gathering became a subtle battlefield where she stood at the edges, invisible, yet acutely aware of every whispered comment and sidelong glance. Her husband, who once held her hand and whispered promises of love, had changed over time. He was not cruel, but his love had grown distant, almost hesitant, as if the inability to have a child had created a silent barrier between them. They no longer shared long walks or quiet evenings together. Conversations were brief and polite, carefully avoiding the one subject that haunted them both. When she tried to bring it up, he would nod, murmuring vague assurances, but she could feel the disappointment in his eyes. It was a weight she carried daily, a shadow that never left her side. The villagers' attitudes did not help. Their curiosity turned into judgment, and judgment into avoidance. Invitations to gatherings stopped arriving, casual greetings became polite but distant, and neighbors who once chatted freely now passed by without a word. She felt the sting of exclusion in every interaction. Even children, innocent as they were, sensed the difference. When other mothers played with their children near her home, she would see their laughter and hear their joy, and it cut her deeply. She longed to feel that joy herself, to have a child to hold close, to whisper comforting words to. Despite this growing isolation, she refused to give up completely. Her whispers to her belly became a daily ritual, a lifeline in a world that seemed determined to reject her. Each morning before the village awoke and her chores began, she would close her eyes, place her hands over her stomach and speak softly. "I know you are there, even if I cannot see you yet. One day we will be together, and they will regret not believing in us." These words, repeated over and over, became a mantra. They gave her strength to face another day, to smile politely when the villagers' eyes held judgment, and to continue living with quiet dignity despite her sorrow. She found other ways to cope with the loneliness. She began writing in a small, worn notebook, pouring out her thoughts, dreams, and fears. The notebook was her secret companion, a place where she could express herself freely without fear of judgment. She wrote letters to the child she longed for, describing the world they would live in, the love she already felt for them, and the life she hoped to share. "I will wait for you," she wrote one night, the candle flickering beside her. "No matter how long it takes, I will hold you one day, and we will be happy together." These letters became her sanctuary, a private world of hope and imagination that kept her heart alive. The emotional strain was not her only challenge. Daily life continued, with its chores, responsibilities, and expectations. She rose before dawn each day, drawing water from the well, sweeping the floors, cooking meals, and tending to the small garden behind her house. Every task was a reminder of her routine life, yet she performed them with patience and care. She learned to carry her sorrow silently, never letting it spill over into the eyes of those around her. Her strength was quiet but unyielding, a hidden force that kept her moving forward even when every step felt heavy. Sometimes, she tried to seek support from her family. Her parents still cared deeply for her, but even their love could not shield her from the relentless judgment of the village. They would listen politely to her concerns and offer gentle words of comfort, yet they too seemed helpless in the face of societal expectations. Some relatives tried to offer advice about fertility treatments, remedies, or rituals, but each suggestion was met with her cautious skepticism. She had learned to guard her heart, to measure her hope carefully, and to rely on her own inner strength rather than external promises. She also began seeking solace in the small joys that life still offered. She would walk along the river at sunrise, feeling the cool breeze on her face, listening to the birds, and imagining the life she wanted to build. She found comfort in the simple beauty of nature, the green fields, the soft hum of insects, the gentle rustling of leaves in the wind. These moments reminded her that the world was larger than her pain, and that hope could still exist even in the quiet corners of life. Evenings were the hardest. When the village settled into sleep, she often sat by her window, staring at the stars. The sky stretched endlessly above her, and she imagined her child looking at the same stars one day. She whispered to them softly, telling them about her love, her struggles, and the dreams she held close to her heart. "You are already mine," she said one night, her voice trembling but resolute. "And one day we will be together. They will see your worth, even if they do not now." These quiet conversations with an unborn presence became her lifeline, a way to nurture hope in a world that seemed intent on crushing it. The village, meanwhile, continued to function as usual. People went about their daily lives, often unaware of the silent battle she fought within her home. Some whispered behind her back, speaking of her childlessness as if it defined her entirely. Others avoided her, unsure how to act around someone who did not fit the expected mold of a young wife. She noticed the difference in how she was treated, yet she refused to let it break her. Instead, she focused on cultivating a resilience that came from within, a quiet strength that no one could see, but that allowed her to endure each day with dignity. Despite the isolation and judgment, there were glimmers of hope. A distant cousin once visited and spoke to her with kindness, noticing the sadness in her eyes. They offered gentle advice about seeking medical help, something not commonly discussed in the village. At first, she was hesitant. She had grown wary of false promises and quick fixes. But the seed of hope was planted, and for the first time in years, she considered that change might be possible. She began quietly researching, asking questions, and learning about options that could one day help her achieve her dream. Even as she explored these possibilities, she remained rooted in her daily life. The routine of chores, the careful smiles, the whispered promises, all of it continued. She had learned that hope and resilience were built slowly, not in grand gestures but in the quiet endurance of everyday life. Each morning she rose with determination. Each evening she whispered her love, and each day she held onto the belief that one day her life would change. The emotional weight of her isolation was heavy, but it also forged an inner strength she had never known before. She learned patience, empathy, and quiet courage. She realized that her worth was not determined by the opinions of others, nor by the fulfillment of societal expectations. Instead, her value lay in her heart, her perseverance, and her ability to nurture hope even in the most difficult circumstances. And so, she continued. She walked through the village streets with her head held high, performed her daily chores with care, and nurtured her secret world of letters, whispers, and imagined conversations with the child she longed for. Each day was a test, a challenge, and a reminder of the life she had yet to live, yet she never allowed despair to claim her completely. The whispers remained, soft but unwavering. "They will regret losing you." These words became more than a promise. They became her identity, her shield, and her guiding light in a world that often seemed unkind. Life in the village went on around her, but she was slowly transforming from a woman defined by exclusion into someone defined by quiet strength. She learned to find beauty in small moments, to cultivate hope in secret, and to speak love even when the world seemed to ignore her. The isolation, though painful, taught her resilience. The judgment, though harsh, taught her patience. And the longing, though deep, taught her the power of unwavering hope. Every evening, as the stars shone above the quiet village, she would place her hand on her belly and whisper once more, softly, gently, but with conviction, "They will regret losing you." And in that whisper she carried all her dreams, all her love, and all her courage, knowing that one day her life, and the life she longed for, would change forever. After years of feeling invisible and cast aside, a small flicker of hope finally appeared in her life. It came in the form of a distant relative, a cousin she had not seen in many years. He was passing through the village and noticed her quiet sadness. Unlike the others, he did not offer pity or judgment. Instead, he spoke with gentle concern, asking about her well-being and listening carefully as she shared her story. For the first time in a long while, she felt understood, as if someone truly saw the depth of her pain and the strength she had carried silently all these years. He spoke of possibilities she had never seriously considered before. He mentioned doctors, clinics, and treatments in the city that could help women who struggled to conceive. At first, she felt skepticism mixed with fear. The idea of leaving her village, traveling far, and placing her hope in strangers seemed daunting. Yet, for the first time in a long time, a spark of curiosity and cautious optimism took root. She began to imagine a life where she could hold the child she had whispered to for years, where she could finally feel the joy she had longed for in her heart. The journey was not easy. She had to convince her husband, who was hesitant and unsure. He had grown accustomed to life as it was, burdened by doubt and a sense of helplessness. They spoke many long nights, carefully weighing the possibilities. At first there was silence, tension, and uncertainty. But slowly he agreed to support her, moved not only by love but also by the realization that her dream had never faded, even under the weight of rejection and isolation. Together, they began preparing for a journey that was as emotional as it was practical. Traveling to the city was a challenge in itself. The roads were long and unfamiliar, the sounds and smells of the bustling city overwhelming at first. But she faced each new obstacle with determination, remembering the whispers she had spoken to her belly for so many years. "They will regret losing you." These words became her shield against fear and doubt. Each step in the unfamiliar city was a step toward hope, a step toward the life she had imagined and fought for quietly in her heart. The first consultations were nerve-wracking. She sat in sterile clinics, surrounded by strangers who asked personal questions and performed tests that left her feeling exposed and vulnerable. There were moments of embarrassment, fear, and even doubt. Each procedure brought anxiety, and the waiting periods felt endless. Sometimes she questioned whether she had made the right choice, but every time uncertainty threatened to overwhelm her, she placed her hand on her belly, even though it was empty, and whispered softly, "I will not give up. We will be together one day." Weeks turned into months, and the path was filled with challenges. Treatments did not always succeed on the first try, and setbacks tested her resilience. Some nights she would sit by the small hotel room window in the city, looking out at the lights that reminded her of stars in her village sky, and cry quietly. The sorrow was heavy, and yet within that sorrow she discovered a remarkable strength. She realized that hope was not a fragile thing, easily broken, but a living force she could nurture even in the darkest times. She found support in unexpected places. Nurses who treated her with kindness, other women who shared similar struggles, and even strangers who offered encouragement became part of her journey. She listened to their stories, learning that her pain was shared by many, though each path was unique. These connections, though brief, gave her courage. They reminded her that she was not alone, and that the dream she held was not impossible. Each conversation, each shared smile, became a small victory against the loneliness she had known for so long. Through every test, every procedure, and every setback, she continued to nurture her secret world. Her notebook, filled with letters to the child she longed for, became even more precious. She wrote about the city, the strange new experiences, and the hope that was slowly building inside her. She spoke to her unborn child as if they were already present, telling them stories, sharing her fears, and expressing her unwavering love. "You are already part of me," she wrote one evening, "and I will wait for you no matter how long it takes. You are my miracle, and one day we will be together." Her husband, though initially distant, began to show signs of renewed care. He held her hand during appointments, listened patiently, and whispered words of encouragement. Their relationship, once strained by disappointment and silence, began to heal slowly. He witnessed her determination and courage, and it reminded him of why he had loved her in the first place. Together, they shared small victories and faced challenges side by side. Their bond grew stronger, forged in the fires of patience, understanding, and shared hope. Evenings were filled with quiet rituals that strengthened her resolve. She would close her eyes, place her hands on her belly, and speak to her child with a voice full of emotion. She described the dreams she held for them, the love she already felt, and the life they would one day share. She imagined holding them in her arms, watching them take their first steps, and whispering the same words she had said to her belly for years. "They will regret losing you." These whispered promises became more than words. They became a lifeline, a source of courage, and a declaration of faith in the unseen future. There were moments of despair, of course. Tests would sometimes show no progress, and each failure threatened to crush her spirit. She would sit quietly in the city hotel room, tears flowing freely, feeling the weight of years of longing and disappointment. Yet, even in these moments, she refused to surrender to despair. She reminded herself of the journey she had already undertaken, of the strength she had discovered within herself, and of the unwavering hope that still burned in her heart. Each setback was not an end, but a challenge to be met with courage. Gradually, a sense of possibility began to emerge. After months of treatment and careful guidance, she began to feel subtle changes in her body, small signs that whispered of hope. Her heart, once heavy with sorrow, began to lift ever so slightly. She felt a connection to life growing within her, a realization that the child she had longed for might finally be coming. The whisper she had spoken for years, "They will regret losing you," now carried a new weight of certainty and joy. She could almost feel the tiny heartbeat, the proof of life that would change everything. During this time, she also reflected on the journey itself. She realized that the years of isolation, judgment, and pain had not broken her. They had shaped her into a woman of extraordinary patience, resilience, and courage. She understood that her struggles had given her the ability to love deeply, to endure quietly, and to hope fiercely. The whispers she had spoken to her belly were no longer just a private promise. They were a testament to her strength and the unwavering power of faith in herself. Her life in the city, though temporary, became a space of transformation. She learned to trust in possibilities, to embrace small victories, and to nurture hope even in uncertainty. Every test, every consultation, and every careful step toward her goal strengthened her belief that one day, she would hold the child she had whispered to for so many years. She carried the lessons of isolation and hardship with her, knowing that they had prepared her to be a loving, patient, and courageous mother. And so, the months passed, filled with challenges and small triumphs. She continued her daily rituals of writing letters, whispering to her belly, and imagining the life that awaited her. She spoke to her child often, telling them about the journey, the love she held for them, and the world they would soon enter. "I am waiting for you," she whispered one night under the city lights. "You are my dream, my hope, and my life. We will be together and they will see your worth." Through the trials and the uncertainty, she discovered a profound truth. Hope is not passive. It is active, nurtured through patience, courage, and unwavering belief. She realized that her journey was not just about having a child. It was about discovering the strength within herself, the power to endure, and the ability to love deeply even before she held life in her arms. She had learned to stand tall in the face of judgment, to cultivate resilience in solitude, and to create a world of hope within her heart. As part 3 of her story draws to a close, she stands at the threshold of a new chapter. The seeds of hope she has nurtured for years are beginning to grow into something tangible, something real. Though the journey has been long and fraught with difficulty, she carries within her the promise of new life and the certainty that her whispered words, "They will regret losing you," will one day be fulfilled. With courage, patience, and love, she continues forward, ready to embrace the miracle that is slowly, but surely becoming a reality. After months of uncertainty, worry, and quiet perseverance, the long-awaited news finally came: she was pregnant. When the doctor spoke the words, she could hardly believe her ears. Her hands shook, her heart raced, and for a moment she sat in stunned silence, trying to process the miracle that had taken so long to arrive. Tears flowed freely down her cheeks, not only for the joy she felt at this moment, but also for the years of struggle, heartbreak, and isolation that had led her to it. She whispered softly to herself, and then to her belly, the words that had been her constant mantra for so long: "They will regret losing you." The first few days after the news were filled with disbelief and awe. She and her husband sat quietly in the small hotel room, holding hands, both overwhelmed by emotion. For years, they had endured disappointment, judgment, and societal pressure, yet here was proof that hope and persistence could bring forth a miracle. Every flutter in her belly, every small change in her body, became a sign of life and promise. The tiny heartbeat she heard during her first ultrasound filled her with a joy so deep that words could not describe it. She had dreamed of this moment for so long that it almost felt unreal, yet the life growing inside her was undeniable. Even as happiness bloomed, she remained cautious. She had waited too long, experienced too much pain, to take this gift for granted. She followed the doctor's advice carefully, rested when necessary, and made small, deliberate choices to protect her health and the life inside her. Each day was a delicate balance between cautious optimism and cautious hope, yet she welcomed it all with gratitude and reverence. She spoke to her child every day, telling them about the world they were soon to enter and the love she already felt. "I have waited for you so long," she whispered one morning as the sun rose over the city. "You are my greatest joy, and I will cherish you forever." Her husband, who had struggled to find words in the past, now spoke more freely, expressing pride, love, and a sense of shared wonder. They would sit together in the evenings, imagining the life they would have with their child, discussing names, and planning for a future that once seemed impossible. Their relationship, once strained by disappointment and distance, now blossomed under the weight of hope and shared anticipation. Each day they grew closer, connected by the miracle they both longed for and nurtured. Despite the happiness, the months were not without challenges. She had to deal with morning sickness, fatigue, and moments of fear that something could go wrong. There were nights when anxiety crept in, when she would lie awake, holding her belly and imagining worst-case scenarios. But every time fear threatened to overwhelm her, she would whisper her mantra, gently reassuring herself and the life growing within. "We will be okay. You are mine, and they will regret losing you." These words, once a private promise, had become a source of strength and courage that guided her through every uncertainty. She also found joy in small daily rituals. She would prepare her home, cleaning and arranging the space, imagining the little clothes she would one day dress her child in, the soft blankets they would sleep under, and the toys she would one day hold in her hands. Each small act of preparation was an affirmation of her hope, a way of turning anticipation into reality. She would often place her hands on her belly, feeling tiny movements, and talk to her child about the life they were beginning together. "You are safe with me," she would whisper. "I have waited for you, and now you are here. We will face the world together." The village, though far away, was never far from her thoughts. She remembered the judgment, the whispers, and the isolation she had endured for so many years. Yet, the miracle growing inside her had transformed her perspective. She realized that those who had doubted her could not take away the love and life she now carried. The child inside her was proof of her resilience, strength, and unwavering hope. She often imagined the day she would return to the village, holding her child in her arms, and seeing the astonishment and acknowledgement on the faces of those who had once dismissed her. During this time, she also focused on nurturing her own heart and mind. She read books about motherhood, spoke to other mothers who shared their experiences, and sought wisdom from anyone who could help her prepare for this new chapter. Every lesson, every shared story, strengthened her confidence and deepened her connection with the life growing within her. She realized that motherhood was not just a dream fulfilled, but a responsibility she was ready to embrace with love, patience, and unwavering dedication. The months passed slowly but beautifully. She felt the subtle changes in her body, the tiny kicks, the growing presence that made every challenge worthwhile. She spoke to her child about the journey they had shared even before birth, the struggles, the whispers, and the hope that had carried them both through years of uncertainty. "We have waited so long," she would say, tears of joy streaming down her face. "But now here you are, and my life is full because of you." Each word, each whispered promise, reinforced the bond between mother and child, a connection that had existed in her heart long before it was visible to the world. As the time for delivery approached, her excitement was mixed with anticipation and a touch of nervousness. She imagined the moment she would finally hold her child in her arms, feeling the warmth, the heartbeat, and the life she had longed for so many years. The hospital room, once intimidating, now felt like a space of possibility, a place where dreams, hope, and resilience would culminate in a miracle. Her husband stood by her side, holding her hand and offering quiet reassurance, a partner in the journey they had traveled together. Finally, the day arrived. Labor was long and exhausting, but she faced it with courage and determination, drawing strength from the years of struggle and hope that had prepared her for this very moment. She whispered to her child through every contraction, offering love, comfort, and encouragement. "You are coming into the world soon," she said softly. "I have waited for you, and now we will be together. You are my miracle, and nothing can take you from me." Each word carried the weight of years of longing, pain, and unwavering hope, a testament to the love that had sustained her through it all. When the first cries finally filled the room, she felt an overwhelming rush of joy, relief, and love. The child she had dreamed of, whispered to, and nurtured in her heart was finally here. Tears streamed down her face as she held the tiny, fragile life in her arms, feeling the warmth, the heartbeat, and the reality of her long-awaited dream. Her husband's eyes were filled with awe and pride, and together they embraced the life that had once been only a promise. The years of struggle, the isolation, and the whispers of doubt now seemed like a distant memory. In their place was the living proof of her resilience, strength, and unwavering belief in hope. She whispered once again to her child, this time in their presence, "They will regret losing you. You are mine, and my love for you is endless. You have made my life complete, and nothing can ever change that." The words were no longer a private mantra. They were a declaration of triumph, love, and vindication. Even after the birth, she continued to nurture the bond with her child. Every day was filled with joy, discovery, and gentle care. She watched the child grow, marveling at every small achievement, every laugh, and every new step. The bond between them, forged in years of hope and whispered promises, became stronger with each passing day. Her child was not only a blessing but also a symbol of the journey she had endured, a living testament to patience, perseverance, and unwavering hope. She also began to consider the future differently. The village, once a place of judgment and isolation, could now see her triumph. Though she did not seek revenge or confrontation, the idea that those who had doubted her would witness her joy was satisfying in a quiet, profound way. Her whispers, once private and desperate, had become reality, and she carried the knowledge of her resilience and strength with pride and dignity. As Part 4 draws to a close, she stood at the center of her miracle, holding her child close, feeling a love so deep it could not be measured. Years of hardship, judgment, and loneliness had led to this moment of triumph and joy. She had whispered promises into the void, nurtured hope through despair, and believed in a dream that many had thought impossible. Now, as she looked into her child's eyes, she knew that every tear, every whispered word, and every moment of patience had been worth it. The miracle was here, and her life had changed forever. The village was never far from her thoughts, even as she cradled her child in her arms. She remembered the years of whispers, judgment, and isolation. The festivals she had once watched from the edges, the laughter of children she had longed to hear in her own home, and the looks of pity and doubt from neighbors all came back to her now, not to hurt her, but to remind her of the journey she had endured. Each memory was a small scar, a testament to her struggle, yet every scar now felt like proof of her strength. She had survived the harshest judgments, endured the longest wait, and now she held in her arms the life she had dreamed of for so long. When she finally returned to the village, there was a mix of curiosity, surprise, and quiet admiration in the air. People who had once whispered about her now stared openly, trying to understand the transformation that had occurred. She walked slowly, holding her child close, feeling a new confidence in her steps. She was no longer the quiet, lonely woman who had once endured years of exclusion. She was a mother, a survivor, and a living proof of the power of hope and resilience. Her whispers, "They will regret losing you," were no longer secret, they had become reality. Neighbors who had doubted her approached cautiously. Some offered apologies, others congratulations, and a few simply watched, unsure of how to react. She met each reaction with calm dignity. She did not seek vengeance or confrontation. She only wished to embrace her life and her child. The joy of holding her little one, of seeing their tiny eyes open and discovering the world, was far more powerful than any bitterness or resentment. She had learned that true victory was in love, patience, and quiet perseverance, not in proving others wrong. Her husband, who had stood by her through every challenge, now shared openly in the village's admiration and awe. He had witnessed her struggle, her determination, and her unwavering hope. Together, they became a symbol of resilience for those around them. Friends, distant relatives, and even strangers looked at them and saw a story of endurance, love, and faith fulfilled. They were no longer simply a couple, they were a family, united by the miracle they had nurtured with patience, care, and unwavering belief. Life, however, was not just about the acknowledgement of others. The true transformation was within her. She had learned to trust in herself, to honor her own heart, and to value her own strength. She understood now that the judgment of others could not define her worth. The years of isolation, whispers, and doubt had forged an inner courage that nothing could shake. She had discovered the power of hope, the strength of love, and the importance of believing in one's dreams, even when the world seemed determined to deny them. Every day with her child was filled with wonder and discovery. She watched in awe as her little one explored the world, learning to crawl, then walk, then speak. Each milestone was a triumph, a small celebration of life and love. She whispered constantly to her child, sharing stories of the past, promises for the future, and affirmations of love. "You are my miracle," she said one morning as the sunlight streamed through the window. "You are the proof of everything I have endured. You are loved beyond measure, and you are safe in my arms." The bond between mother and child grew stronger with each passing day, nurtured by years of hope, whispered promises, and unwavering care. She also began to reflect on her own journey, realizing that the hardships she had faced had given her a wisdom and strength that she might not have discovered otherwise. She taught her child about kindness, patience, and perseverance, sharing lessons learned from her own life. She spoke not only of joy and love, but also of resilience, courage, and hope. She wanted her child to grow understanding that life could be challenging, but that strength, faith, and love could overcome even the hardest obstacles. The village, slowly, began to recognize the truth of her story. People who had once cast her aside began to see her differently. Mothers who had whispered behind her back now approached with quiet respect. Relatives who had doubted her journey now acknowledged her courage. Even the children who had once run past her now looked at her child with admiration and wonder. She did not need their approval, but the acknowledgement was a quiet affirmation of the truth she had always known, that love, perseverance, and unwavering hope were more powerful than judgment, cruelty, or doubt. Her whispers, once private and fragile, had become a legacy. "They will regret losing you," she had said for years in moments of solitude and quiet despair. Now she repeated those words with a sense of triumph, whispering them to her child as they slept in her arms. "You are mine," she would say softly. "You are loved, and they will see the treasure they missed." But our life is not defined by them. It is defined by the love we share and the strength we hold. Her whispered words were no longer a secret hope. They were a declaration of victory, a truth born of patience, courage, and enduring love. She also began to use her story to inspire others. Women who faced similar struggles sought her advice and comfort. She listened with compassion, sharing her experiences and encouraging them to hold on to hope, to nurture faith, and to believe in the possibility of miracles. She reminded them that worth was not defined by society's expectations, but by the strength, love, and courage they carried in their hearts. Through her words and actions, she became a symbol of resilience, hope, and unwavering determination. Her husband, equally transformed by the journey, became a partner not only in life, but in teaching others about patience, support, and shared hope. Together, they showed the village that love and belief could overcome hardship, that miracles were possible, and that those who persevere with kindness and courage could achieve their dreams. Their story spread quietly, becoming a beacon of inspiration for others who had faced judgment, isolation, or despair. Even as her child grew and life continued, she never forgot the years of struggle that had brought them here. She honored the past by embracing the present fully and teaching the lessons of hope, patience, and courage. She celebrated every small milestone, every laugh, and every shared moment as proof that the journey, no matter how long or difficult, was worth every tear, every whisper, and every silent prayer. As the seasons passed, she realized something profound. The life she held in her arms, the joy she experienced each day, and the love she nurtured were all more valuable than any acknowledgement from others. The whispers of judgment and doubt had faded into the background, replaced by laughter, warmth, and a sense of fulfillment she had never known before. She had found her place not through approval or recognition, but through love, resilience, and unwavering hope. Her story, though deeply personal, became a quiet inspiration to the village and beyond. People began to understand that true strength often lies in patience and endurance, that hope can survive even in the harshest conditions, and that love, when nurtured carefully and faithfully, can overcome any obstacle. She had lived years of rejection and pain, yet she emerged with courage, wisdom, and a heart full of love. Her journey was a testament to the power of belief, the beauty of resilience, and the miracles that await those who never give up. Every night as she placed her child to sleep and watched the soft rise and fall of their chest, she whispered once more, "They will regret losing you. You are mine, and my love for you is endless. We have endured together, we have hoped together, and now we live together. You are a miracle, and our life is full because of you." These whispers, which had carried her through years of sorrow and doubt, had finally become the reality she had always imagined. In the end, she knew that her journey had changed her forever. She had faced isolation, judgment, and despair, yet she had not given up. She had nurtured hope, believed in miracles, and held on to love even when the world seemed cruel. She had learned the value of patience, the power of resilience, and the beauty of unwavering faith. And now, as she held her child close, she understood that the whispers, the prayers, and the tears had all led to this moment of triumph, joy, and fulfillment. Her life had been transformed, and so had her heart. She no longer defined herself by the opinions of others, but by the love she carried and the courage she had cultivated. She had become a mother, a survivor, and an inspiration. Her whispers, once fragile and private, were now living proof that even in the darkest times, hope, perseverance, and love could bring forth miracles. And every day, as she looked into her child's eyes, she knew that their shared journey had only just begun, filled with love, joy, and endless possibilities.